Okay, we're here for another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dashi Miller here from Warrior Concepts here in East Central Pennsylvania. Anyway, so this week we're going to take a look at some advanced self-defense strategies and tactics, which is what we normally look at. Normally I would put the Japanese up here, but I decided to move things around. So if you're new to this, this is all about strategies and tactics. I'm not a dancing monkey. I'm not going to be demonstrating techniques. So if that's all you're here for, head off to the next YouTube video or whatever else you're doing, okay? This is for the thinkers. This is for the folks that want to understand what makes the techniques work so that they can better control the situation, right? We're going to be talking a lot about the difference between the ninja's approach or the approach we take in ninjutsu or anyone that's focused on strategic and tactical application, whether it's a military unit, law enforcement, individual who's dealing with an actual street survival situation, as opposed to two bulls in a bar fighting over who knows what, right? Okay, and we'll take a look at these different things. Anyway, set my notes off to the side here. That's not going to help me. Get back here to the beginning. So got a lot to cover in a little bit of time, so we're going to make sure that we do that. And then, of course, as usual, right, our Friday Masters class springboards off of this training. So URL's down there if you want to take a look at that. But anyway, what we're going to be taking a look at during this session is the ninja's Bo-Ryaku, right? Bo-Ryaku. I don't know if you can see that or not. If you're on a small device, maybe not. Maybe expand your picture a little bit. Bo-Ryaku. This is not the same as you might see on a list of samurai or skills within Bushido. Right? In Bushido, the word is heiho, right? Don't mispronounce that, okay? Heiho, H-E-I-H-O, okay? That has to do with military tactics and is really about how you're using your resources and your assets and how troop movements and things like that, right? So the confusion comes in when people overly simplify things, especially into English, right? Because I've seen lists where heiho is listed as, it could be military strategy or it's just listed as strategy, right? And Bo-Ryaku, right? Very often, you'll just see it as like strategy, right? But as you'll see here coming up, there's a lot of depth to this that really points to a wide array of applications, as opposed to just being something that, I don't know, it's just a quick learn. Okay, so this Bo-Ryaku is one of the ninja juhake, right? The 18 skills or skill levels or training areas or whatever within the Togakure-ryu of ninjutsu. There were lots of ninja schools and ninja lineages, ninja Yuha, whatever, throughout Japanese history, but very often they might have just been put together very, very quickly because there was a battle going on in that area, or it was regional, or it was connected to a particular leader or lord. And very often they were highly specialized in things, might have been espionage or information gathering or whatever. But the point is that they didn't necessarily have what a lot of people think of within the realm of ninjutsu today that actually comes from this Togakure school. And that's like self-defense techniques and actual hand-to-hand combat and weapons and whatnot. Because ninjutsu in that realm is all about information gathering, espionage, those kind of things that we read about or see in cool movies and stuff like that, right? The Togakure-ryu is a very, very robust system where there's things for, we'll call it operating in many different realms. How about that? Okay. Survivability on all fronts. Okay. So Bo-Ryaku is one of these 18. I have a book coming out here pretty soon that is Seishin Teki Kyoyo, which is spiritual refinement, personal development, whatever. It's also one of the Juhake. It's typically listed as number 1 in the Togakure school, right? Because if you don't get your inner shit together, you can really get lost in all the negative combat stuff that goes on in ninjutsu, but you can also fall for fantasy stuff and all kinds of things. To me, out of the 18 skill sets, everything is dependent upon Seishin, and everything is embedded with and by Bo-Ryaku. Everything. Okay? I've often said over and over again, if you've been following this or my Kuden podcast, or you're one of my students, that everything in ninjutsu is Kyujutsu Tenkan. It's all where we're disguising truth and falsehood, and there's nothing is ever what it looks like, kind of thing, right? And so that's this kind of thing. So the ninja have very different way of looking at things and being able to use absolutely anything, including the attacker's own belief system, preferences, personality, weaknesses, needs, all kinds of things, right? Against them, okay? Because the ninja often found themselves, just like most of us today, find ourselves in an overwhelm situation. What I mean by that is between authority, law, that kind of stuff, and who knows, depending on where you live, right? Gangs and criminal organizations, and just the fact that, you know, I'm 5'6", and I know I'm a little heavier and whatnot. I just turned 62, so I am not, right? I'm not in a position or a place, typically age and all that kind of stuff, right, to be dealing with 20-something gangbangers or the guys that, you know, just got out of prison. And what that means, besides their crime, besides the fact they were behind bars and all that, is that almost every day they were out in the yard or in a gym pumping iron or sharing ideas with other criminals that were in, right? You know, there's like a breaking and entering class at the you know, East Wall at 1 p.m. and somebody's teaching tricks, and a lot of shit goes on, right? It's almost like a correspondence course without a correspondence. You don't have to mail it in, okay? Anyway, so let's jump into this, right? So my objective for this training session is to teach on how to use strategic thinking and tactics to avoid direct engagement and to leverage the principles, the ninja's principles of deception and manipulation for real world modern self-defense. Okay. So real quickly here, let's just kind of jump into this, right? So again, the term is Bo-Ryaku. So let's break this down. I like to do this a lot. This is my sloppy handwriting when it comes to writing kanji, but this gets broken down into two kanji, right? The one for Bo and the one for Ryaku, right? So what do those things mean? What I want to do is I want to come at this from a, what do they mean literally, right? Kanji, and then what's implied in this realm of training, okay? It's very different, okay? So Bo itself is strategy. This is not the same Bo as like the one for stick or staff, right? People in English will only look at like romaji, or they hear a sound, and but I mean, it's normal, it's natural, it's what we did as children, right? You know, we hear tree and we hear treat, because we're not, you know, experts at the language yet, right? Mom says, "Do you see that tree?" And you're like looking around for a cookie, right? Not the same. Okay. I know how people in the U.S. here like to say like close enough for government work and all that, which is a bass-backwards way of looking at something that meant something completely different in when it was originally invented, right? So strategy, scheme, well, that's different, right? Plot, that's different, right? And plan. Okay. And then Ryaku, right? Ryaku, tactics, maneuver, shortcut, right? Tactics, maneuver, shortcut. A lot of people are all about shortcuts, of course. Outline, which kind of goes in with the plan, right? It's an outline, so we're not looking at specifics or like what's the official right way to do it, Sensei. Not outlined, outline. Right. And what was the other one I had? Oh, simplification. Simplification. Okay, so there's lots of realms where we say, usually, right, the simplest and most obvious thing is probably it. Okay, a lot of my corporate or people that know me in the corporate realm, when I'm dealing with like workplace violence and going in and doing consulting and advising and all that, have often said that I use this Occam's razor approach where, like, trim the fat, right? Let's get there as quickly as possible without being lazy, covering our bases and making sure that this is implemented very, very quickly. It's kind of backwards from the way most consultants do it, because most consultants get paid by the hour. So the longer I work on it, the more I get paid. But in the security and protection world, the longer I work on it, the longer they don't have a complete system. So I don't charge by the hour, I charge by the value of the project, right? And so here's what your return on investment is. Anyway, all right, so literal translation then is a strategic plan, or we could say, let's see, strategic plan or a tactical scheme. Tactical scheme. Okay, probably can't read my writing, but I like putting things on a whiteboard anyway, right? So that's a literal translation, right? But what about what's implied? Okay, the implied definitions within Bo-Ryaku. And again, how are we defining this? How are we defining this term of self-defense? Okay, when new students come to me, I don't care if it's in the dojo or if it's in my online inner circle program, working on black belt, not working on black, I don't care, right? One of the first resources they get is a list known as the 8 phases of strategic self-defense action or strategic self-defense, right? So these eight areas, right? And it's not 8 different types of techniques. It's not 8 different maneuvers or whatever. It's 8 phases or 8 opportunities or 8 different requirements, 8 different types of self-defense, right? We're going to talk about that toward the end, but the first one is general awareness, okay? The first problem is understanding the problem. Most people go, I want to learn how to fight, I want to learn self-defense or whatever. They just go to somebody that's advertising it, or my dad's military buddy, whatever, right? Okay, but what do you need it for? Okay, what kind of situations might you run into? Okay, I just did a meme and posted it for those of you on Facebook. Posted one. It's not one version. I just have the web address for the dojo, and then I have one for our online stuff. But it's the same meme, right? And so there's a picture on it and says, "A fight's a fight." What fighters think we mean when we say self-defense. And then the bottom picture, right? And of course that picture at the top, right? 2 guys they're gonna slug it out, right? And the picture at the bottom has some gangbangers staring at you, and a couple of them have weapons out. And that one is something like, but this, right? This is what people that are afraid of dangers in the world are trying to learn when it comes to self-defense, okay? And then alongside just says huge difference, okay? So again, what do we mean? So general awareness goes way beyond just like, I know that danger exists in the world and it might touch me or somebody I love. Yeah, duh. But what does that look like, right? What are the most likely attacks to come? Different personality types, different sizes, different scenarios, different environments, whatever. It's way different than hopping into a freaking ring or always fighting the same way and always fighting different people who fight the same way that you, right? It's very, very different, okay? So within the ninja's Bo-Ryaku area, we're also talking about strategic thinking, okay? We're talking about deceptive planning. We're talking about holistic problem solving, right? Not just coming up with an answer, right? Subtle manipulation, long-term vision, contingency preparation, right? What are your plans B through Z? Exploiting weaknesses, shaping perceptions, right? Controlling his perceptions, creating opportunities, resourcefulness, that kind of thing. Depth and scope beyond fighting just blows this out of the water, because now we're looking at things like psychological manipulation, conflict avoidance, right? Because phase 3 in that 8-phase framework that I give people, phase 3 is escape to safety, right? Because the reality is sometimes, and there's a lot of situations that you can't fucking survive, right? If you stay, if you fight. There's also situations that I might be able to win or survive, but I can't with my wife cowering behind me, or me trying to worry about her safety at the same time, or my 5-year-old grandson panicking and grabbing a hold of my leg and that kind of stuff. That's the time to frickin', we got to go. Okay, check please. All right. Environmental advantage, social engineering. Okay, of course, in the ninja's realm, espionage and intelligence. In my realm, in the corporate world as a consultant, this is why I gravitated to this direction, not as security consultant, right? Crisis management, right? Diplomatic negotiations, not just if you're in government and you're doing a diplomatic kind of thing, right? Diplomatic negotiations is, how do I get what I want? They get something out of it, right? And we all kind of benefit. Yeah, we had to give up something to get something or whatever, but right, how do we avoid going to war over this situation, right? It also includes post-conflict recovery, right? And that could be everything from in the 8 phases. Phase 7. Phase 7 is post-incident recovery. You could end up dealing with PTSD. You could also end up dealing with family members who trusted that you could protect them, but after watching the monster come out to protect their ass, now they're terrified and won't want to hang out around you at all. Okay? How do you resolve that? Especially if it's people you really care about. And the I don't give a shit about whatever, at least I saved their ass. Yeah, okay. Right. And then again, we have legal and social strategy. Okay, so again, in the 8 phases, one of the self-defense realms. Self-defense in that PTSD realm is my own system backfiring on me, and I need to be able to protect myself from this condition, right? Legal and social still kind of bleeds over to the family members kind of thing, where they're doing the PTSD, but now they're rearranging, or there's a safety thing, right? Imagine protecting people, and an ex decides they're going to start a legal process to keep you from your kids because you're obviously not safe. You've got this monster inside. I know it's fucked up, but it happens all the time. Okay. So you're not an abuser, you're not anything like that, but they're going to use this against you. Okay. But also you got the legal system as well. Okay. Phase 8 in the 8 phases is protecting yourself against the very system that's supposed to be in place to protect us against the bad guys. But at any turn, these things could shift against you, right? Anyway, so Bo-Ryaku encompasses basically what we could call the art of thinking ahead and controlling the narrative, right? In his head, in the heads of witnesses to the thing that's happening, okay? And using all available resources, tools, whatever, not just physical skills, not just the different parts of my body and all that kind of stuff, right? Anything and everything at hand that fits that context, right? And that's where the strategic thinking comes in, right? I've got all this shit, but what's the best one for this one to get this handled effectively, efficiently, relatively effortlessly, and with the least amount of wear and tear on me in the process? Because I'm going to be no good to anybody if I got damaged, right? This is kind of summed up in there's a quote in the scrolls. It's called the Ninpo of Ninjutsu, right? That kind of threw me off, and I had to think about that for a while. But there are these 3 incidents where they're determined to be a good, a poor, or a fair perseverance, right? Nin, right? And one of those is If in my attempt to elude or protect from danger, if I injure the enemy and also do things that result in my own injury, that is a poor perseverance. Right? What that points to is direct confrontation and playing the sluggo. I'm willing to take one to get one kind of thing, and it's that brute force kind of thing. In Ninja 2, that's seen as, right? I understand sometimes you might have to do it, but Ninja 2, it's like this is a rare occasion. Very, very rare. Okay? All right. So, again, we're using all available tools to achieve the objective, whether it's in combat or whether it's in daily life. Doesn't matter. Okay? It's both macrocosmic, big picture, and microcosmic in scope, right? And it's the ability to strategically adapt across a wide range of scenarios, right? Most people, when they come to Ninjutsu, in their head, based on prior, watch movies or whatever, right? Or just this prior, this I don't know, base level belief system, based on the way things are presented in today's world. Ninjutsu is just seen as a martial arts or a self-defense or martial arts option among other options. The reality is that it's very, very different. There are things that look like other martial arts. There are things that look like negotiations, whatever, right? Relationships, right? All that stuff, right? So what I really want to highlight here is the importance of thinking strategically instead of relying on brute strength or ego. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, right? So there's a huge difference, because when I say that the ninja think very, very strategically, often what I can already hear is people going, yeah, but like anybody fights, like has a strategy. They all think strategically. Yeah, I know. Okay. However, the difference between conventional strategic thinking, right, as normally understood by the brute force fighters, okay, and the ninja's Bo-Ryaku approach lies in the depth, adaptability, and subtlety, right, of their respective methods. So we'll take a look at some key differences, okay? But let's take a look at a quick problem here, because again, back to that meme that I did. Got that fighter kind of thing, and people talk about self-defense, and I often make references to this from my time as a police officer for a long, for what, almost a decade. So every time I pulled two guys apart that were fighting, both of them, you know what they said? I was just defending myself. Yeah, of course you were. He was throwing shit at you, and you were trying to not get hit, and you were throwing stuff at him to hit him. Sorry, Bubba, that's a fight. That's a contest. We're trying to beat the shit out of each other to see who comes out on top. That's a fight. That's a contest. It's not necessarily a survival situation. Right? If it was, somebody had pulled a weapon already. Right? Very, very different. Okay. So, but back to that meme, the difference between what people think about self-defense, right? Because I do this in the corporate world when I'm initially starting off their training, right? Because one of my uphill climbs is to be able to help corporate leaders get around a common misconception, fighting, self-defense, right? And so what I do is I reduce it to a mathematical equation, right? Don't worry, you don't have to be good at math, right? Because this is the way most people think of self-defense in their head. Self-defense equals fighting. That could be, maybe, right? I might use the same tactics that a fighter uses, okay, if things go physical. But what about when I've got inner office politics going on the job, and I can't be the me I really want to be, or I'm going to be out of my ass looking for a job, and now I got to worry about the mortgage being paid, the kids eating, and medical bills being paid, and all that kind of stuff. And my I don't give a shit, at least I told them, isn't going to help. Okay, I run the risk now of losing family. I run the risk of See, this is that big picture vision. Bo-Ryaku is about big picture vision, very different from military strategy, which very often is about this particular skirmish. You can win the battle and lose the fucking war. Right? Bo-Ryaku, right? This is mission oriented, long term. Okay. Again, some people might still have a problem with seeing the difference, but the difference here is in, again, depth, adaptability, right? How quickly and easily somebody can change to a different way of doing things, and the subtlety of their respective methods, right? Often you see, difference between somebody can't see the trees, they can't see the details, they can't see outside of their emotional, egocentric response because this guy called me a name or bumped into my shoulder or whatever, and who's going to take care of the family if I end up in the ER or jail or not ER, ICU, jail or the morgue. Right. So I'll give you a couple of little things here. These are, when I talk about self-defense or survival, shit's different. And the big premise here is that I didn't choose to be here. Nobody bumped me in the shoulder and I turned around and went, okay? Because we never know what the other person has going on behind them or what happened to them in the day earlier, and they might normally be a nice person. But if you've ever seen the old movie from, I think, the late 70s, early 80s, called Falling Down, I highly recommend it. Okay. Anyway, so back to that meme, couple of little things, right? I've got the picture of the gangbanger over there, but when might it be a good idea to not focus on brute force or the normal conventional way of fighting, right? So just a couple to think of, right? So he's better skilled. You better have something else in your bag of tricks, because if he's just a freaking better fighter, you're going to lose. Okay? You're going to lose. He's armed and you're not. Okay? So weapons are involved. And when I say he's armed and you're not, you might be armed, but he's got something bigger. The old, he brought a gun to a knife fight because you were armed with a knife and he, right? Or you've got a stick, or he's, right? I got my martial arts, and right? His friend clocks you from behind with a pipe. Yeah. And I don't mean like that kind of pipe, right? Let's see. You're cornered. You're boxed in. It's not like a ring where everybody's out of your way, right? And cornered might not be structurally. It might be the mall during heavy holiday shopping time, or you're at a concert or whatever, and you're just fucking boxed in. Bodies everywhere. They're creating like a wall, and everything's moving, and right? You don't have your perfect dojo conditions. Okay. He's bigger. He's bigger, faster, stronger. Okay. You're outnumbered. Oh, I ran out of numbers down here. That's coincidental, right? You're outnumbered. So multiple attackers. Okay. You're caught off guard, right? It's a surprise attack. Okay. Because when most people think of fighting, there's either an agreement here, there's a bump, and then there's some, talking smack and whatnot. And then next thing you know, it goes physical, or if it's a sport thing, there's a bow in, there's glove bumping or whatever, and a ding ding, and then you get. Okay. What if you've been hit 1, 2, 3 times or whatever before you even realize you're in a physical situation? Okay. You were just thinking, you just got out of your car and shit, what do you want me to bring home from the store? And you're thinking like this before you get back in the car. Next thing you know, is some jackwagon in front of you with a knife, like, okay. And you have to catch up. Okay. One of my long distance students grew up in Jamaica. I can't remember how long ago he moved to the States, but he's been here for quite a while because his son is 9. But he survived a multiple attacker scenario at a bus stop when he was still living in Jamaica, and he should be dead. right? Because he was stabbed multiple times and left for dead. So when he went looking for self-defense kind of things and tried a couple of the fighter kind of things, it's like we didn't even approach the shit that was going on in that scenario. Okay, so got to be careful. All right, okay, so let's go down a couple of key differences here very, very quickly. I'm going to get a different color. Still need a contrast, but it's really freaking cold where I am right now. I woke up this morning, it was like -4 degrees. And so like the stuff in the dojo is cold. Anyway, all right, so very, very quickly, right? So again, differences between conventional fighter and using this Bo-Ryaku method, right? So what we have here is, what did I just forget here? Okay, so surface level versus deep level thinking. Okay, so conventional fighter strategy, and again, this is a general statement across the majority of things. Are there exceptions? Of course. That's called life. That's called reality. All right. So fighters who rely on brute force often think strategically, right, in a linear cause and effect way. And I actually start my students in this direction because I need them to start thinking strategically in some way, right? But that's got to expand. And it doesn't just expand this way. There's a layering thing that happens in Bo-Ryaku. So even if the guy sees one thing and tries to avoid that, he's still enveloped at these other layers that he doesn't know is going on, okay? So their strategies are typically based on overwhelming their opponent through superior strength, endurance, right? I've had people tell me, like, look at your size, man. Your O2 use, you could never last 5 rounds. 5 rounds? Fuck you, right? The average self-defense situation is over in 2 to 10 seconds, right? No, okay? That's what we train for, all right? So endurance, technical prowess, those kind of things, right? They usually lead off with the, and you see it online, right? They'll see mine or somebody else's videos, and they're like, when we're gonna fucking in the street, do that to me, man, I'll kick your ass. We're not even in the same realm, and they don't even know me. All they saw was a clip of something, and that triggered their I need to be better than everybody else bullshit. And see, the other way they think too is they don't even think about the fact that other people are watching, and if anybody wanted to target them, the number of fights they're in, somebody already knows how you do it, so they're just going to attack you in a way that you can't. I don't care how big and bad you are, we're all easy to kill. Shooting you from across the street, or running a car into you, which just happened not too long ago here where I live, like out in the middle of friggin' nowhere, right? So anyway, so the big thing here that they really focus on, a couple of key points, right? Wearing the opponent down through attrition, right? We're just going to wear him down. We're going to take away his energy. We're going to wreck his body and whatnot. So he just can't do as much with the resources that he has, right? We're exploiting obvious weaknesses in technique or physical condition, right? So he's slower or weaker or thinner, or he's got a glass jaw, right? Because they keep going after, they keep wanting this knockout, right? There's lots of points on the body that you can hit, knock somebody out, and people think it's woo-woo, but there's 2 nerves, one on each side of the body here that come out of the brain, right back here, comes down the side of your neck through your carotid pouch, under your clavicle, runs down your torso and plugs into your diaphragm. It's called the phrenic nerve, both of them, right? Okay, phrenic nerve. It's what stimulates the diaphragm to contract and release that makes you breathe. So you can hit somebody in a way that, right? And we know about hitting somebody in the bread box. You can knock them out. You hit one side or the other side, and you've got a spleen or a liver, drop somebody like a friggin' stone. Okay? So, but, right? There are rules, there are gloves, there are safety mechanisms, and even on the street, right? People are always often surprised that, look, I got the knockout, except this guy's limp body fell down and he cracked his head on the curb or some object that was laying on the road. or I hit him and he stumbled out into traffic and got hit by a car. Now I'm going to jail for manslaughter. Okay? Well, I didn't mean it. What'd you do to prevent it? Okay? So again, this is what I mean by big picture thinking as opposed to, right? Their mentality tends to be about trading blows, expecting that their strength and toughness will be the thing that gets them through. Right? No offense to anybody that this mindset is there, but across the self-defense world, we have a name for that. It's called caveman thinking. Right? It's not a whole lot different than just clubbing somebody. I club him, he clubs me. I club. Right? So the mentality in that realm is I am the bigger, faster, I'm the baddest motherfucker on the block, and so therefore that's my advantage. Except we all get old, we all get ill, we all get injured. Okay? And as I tell my students, I'm joking because I typically don't have the tough guys in here, never piss off people who know where you sleep. Because I don't care how tough you are when you're wide awake. Old, infirm, ill, sleeping, whatever, helpless as a fucking baby. Right? Anyway, all right. So again, the limitations, we get that kind of stuff, right? On the Bo-Ryaku side, is far deeper, right? It's incorporating not just physical tactics, but psychological, environmental, and even situational manipulation, right? Ninja strategy considers multiple dimensions: the opponent's mindset, assumptions, emotional state, how to create or exploit opportunities that don't currently exist. Okay. During the Friday class, we're going to be looking at feigning weakness as a way to set traps. Okay. If somebody has a much better skill set or they're bigger than I or whatever, I'm actually going to lead with a broken technique. Okay. That it looks like I hit him at whatever, right? It just looks like right? Because that affects him on multiple levels. I know, right? He's weak. This is going to be easy. But what people don't understand is that the tough guys subconsciously, unconsciously will reduce the level of intent and strength and whatnot based on their perception of the amount of resistance or opposition they're going to get. Not just tough guys. We all do it, right? If I'm out shopping for a freaking apartment, right? And the landlord says the rent's $1,000 a month. I don't go, dude, it's okay. I'd rather give you $1,500. Nobody does that. Right? It's how marketers get you. Right? It's normally this much, but we're going to give it to you for this, and we're going to double your order. And you go, oh shit, wow. Okay? Or you're going to get your black belt in 27 days instead of 3 years or 5 years. I'm going to go train with him. Right? We're all led around by our nostrils. I almost said something else. Anyway, right? And then we're also using the environment. We're using timing. We're using deception, all those kind of things to render the attacker's strengths irrelevant. We're not trying to beat his strengths. We're not trying to just do a feint and tricky bob and weave kind of thing. What we're seeking out to do with this is render any advantage he has just irrelevant. Doesn't matter. Okay? Doesn't matter. Okay? So Bo-Ryaku is proactive rather than reactive, and it seeks to shape the engagement entirely, the whole thing. When I say control the bubble, I just had a student the other day in class come up and go, Sensei, what are you talking about? You keep saying control the bubble. Like, am I controlling like a certain part of his body, or am I control? No. And where I start students off is the bubble is just above the top of his head to the floor, just outside his shoulders to just outside my shoulders, just above the top of my head, right? So top of his head, top of my head, outside shoulders. That's the only thing that matters. Then we move into multiple attackers. Now it's top of the head of the tallest person in this group, outside the shoulder of the person farthest to the left, farthest to the right to mine. And my job now is to position so none of these jackwagons can get behind me, which means I have to control distance, I have to control angling, those kind of things, so that they all have to be funneled in here. Okay. So anyway, next is predictable versus unpredictable. Having one of those moments. Let's see if this one works. Everything got cold because I had this stuff next to the window. Predictable versus unpredictable. Okay. The number of times that somebody has commented under one of my videos that that's bullshit, or somebody that said, "Oh God, this backward, inside out ninja BS talking." Everybody knows, dude, just get in a ring, put some gloves on, and learn to fight like everybody else. Or I can't remember a time when I ever grabbed somebody or they grabbed me or whatever. So that never happens. Well, you've obviously never been a cop and never had to deal with people who are victimized, because you can't choke the shit out of somebody or choke them to death without grabbing them. You can't restrain somebody, right? They're trying to get away from you, and you. Okay, so no, you were compliant, and everybody in your fucking neighborhood fights the same way. Okay. So in your world, that's never happened, but don't tell me it's not a possibility. Right? So predictable versus unpredictable, right? Just go down through, go any of my videos, anybody else's videos, and go down through and pay attention to the naysayers, okay? Because they're telling you at least three things across the board. They're telling you three things, okay? If you're training in ninjutsu, you're paying attention to those. Okay? If you laugh along, or you are, I didn't say laugh at them, I said laughing along with them, then you think the same way. Okay? But that's information gathering, because this person is telling you, one, that's never happened to me. So if you grab me, I'm going to try to hit you to get you off of me. But if you grab me in a way that I can't get at you with my limbs, I have a problem. What they're telling you is there's certain things, again, that they can't handle. They're telling you that there's certain things that they won't even look for, consciously, unconsciously, whatever, because they don't have any experience with that. Okay? A child would never worry about getting burned by a hot pot if they didn't get burned by something. We don't develop that reflex as soon as we feel the heat to move away from it, or something hot drops on us and we drop it. Watch a child. Right? Ninja, there's a part of our training in the Tobacco Ryu where you watch different categories of people, including children. I'm not going to mimic a child. However, if I pay attention, and I've been a parent several times over, every single time, the child touched something different, but they touched that thing that was hot, and it took a little bit for them to register what was going on, and then the fact that they were damaged. And sometimes we actually had to grab their hand and pull it away because they didn't know what to do. There was no pre-wired reflex. So people that don't train for certain things, or don't even acknowledge that they're there and have never had that experience, do not have a pre-wired reflex. That means they have to make shit up on the fly. Okay? So there's a whole bunch of things. If you reverse engineer those, okay, or how easily somebody's distracted. Right? The number of times I've been called Santa, which is awesome. It's funnier than shit, right? Well, it was funny the first time it happened. After that, it's like, can you come up with something more obvious or more creative, right? But, or, let's see, where am I about? Yeah. Okay. My omomori that I got from, this came from a temple in Kyoto, and this came from one of the Togakure shrines in Japan, right? So omomori, these are blessing bags and whatnot. So it's good juju kind of thing, right? But these have been called price tags that I forgot to take off my pants or my belt. So here's the question. If that person doesn't know what they're looking at with something I'm freaking wearing, what about the technique? Can't they see, or don't they understand? Be careful, right? Okay, so predictable versus unpredictable. Conventional fighters, their approach often revolves around, again, expected patterns of engagement. Everybody fights the same, right? So, again, different fighter types, it's going to look different, right? So things like closing the gap for a takedown, landing a knockout punch. I talked about that earlier. Forcing the opponent into a corner. While there's strategy, it relies on established formulas that can be anticipated. Okay? So if you're doing shit that he can anticipate because that is common to him, you can't surprise him. And if he has any of those advantages we talked about, bigger, faster, stronger, more skilled, whatever, and you have an uphill battle just to get to zero. Right? The ninja's approach, though, thrives on unpredictability. Okay? Bo-Ryaku encourages things like misdirection, manipulation, unconventional tactics that leave this guy off balance and unprepared. He has to make up a solution to what you're doing on the fly in real time. No time to think, no time, right? Because he's never seen it before. Okay, and this isn't a style thing. People often think I'm talking about style. It's not style. Ninjutsu is not a style. Ninjutsu has no style. Ninjutsu's ultimate goal is to hit the point of zero where you are full potential. You can do anything. I can mimic other martial arts once you're there, and a lot of my viewers, you know what it's like, right? Walk into any martial arts school, once you've mastered Budo, Ninpo, Taijutsu, walk into most martial arts schools and be able to pick up on their way of movement and whatnot, 70% correct very, very quickly. It'll be the minor details that kind of throw you off, but it's been my experience that it doesn't work in the other direction. The more formulaic and the more set in stone they are, when we are just kind of moving freely and whatnot, because they've trained their muscles to only work a certain way and within a certain range. Okay, so very different. Okay, so again, we're looking at things like feigning weakness to bait overcommitment. We're going to do something like that during Friday's class, using psychological manipulation to make the opponent second guess themselves. There's a strategy, and this was used in the Battle of Iganoran, where Oba Nobunaga's son, who was trying to make a name for himself, because out of 4 sons, he was the runt, and Dad thought he was never going to amount to anything. He was just a tag along kind of thing, right? Well, the son, in an attempt to prove Dad wrong, invaded Iga. Okay, took an army, invaded Iga, got his ass handed to them, because what the ninja did was funneled his army into a narrow pass. And if you know any of the geography of that area, that's not difficult. But they were funneled into a narrow pass. What does that mean? Well, if my army takes up this much fucking room, but I hit a narrow pass where only a couple can come through at a time. Wagons, supply lines, gear, weapon reload stuff, all that. And then the enemy is in ambush positions where we only have to pick off the ones popping out the other end. Okay? What's that look like in everyday self-defense? I got multiple guys trying to get me, or just this guy, right? And based on the way he punches and all that, right? I move into or through a doorway. And now they can't all get through the doorway at the same time. So first guy coming through the doorway gets something applied to him that drops him at the doorway. The next guy, same thing, drops on top of him or in there, falls back against the doorway or whatever. And what I end up doing is plugging up the hole. Okay? This is strategy. Okay? Recognizing the guy, throws punches like this and whatnot, right? Okay? Get near a pole, get near a tree, get near a wall, back up. So remember, his idea was to back me into a corner, right? I get up against the wall, right? And I keep leaning back when he throws things. So he not bobbing and weaving. My job isn't to make him miss and stay in range for the other one just so I can get him. What I'm going to be doing is pulling back so he overcommits because he needs to fucking hit me. His imperative personality type needs to get me. So if I do this while suddenly backing up against the wall, and then when he overcommits and I shift and he busts his knuckles against the wall, okay? Understand? Okay. Again, this is strategic thinking, because there's only so many things you can do with a human body and so many things you can do to a human body. But planning, plotting, controlling the situation, controlling him in his head and his heart, where he doesn't realize that he did it to himself, that's different. If I beat his ass, I have a long-term mission, okay, protecting my family and all that, watching over my shoulder after this fight. If I beat his ass, I have to worry about something called revenge. Okay, you see it in sport fights too. I want a rematch. Fuck that. It's a one and done thing. I want him to go home licking his wounds thinking, fuck, if I wouldn't have. Okay? I want his friends fucking laughing at him or dragging him off because they saw that he made a mistake. Not that I made him make a mistake. Right? I can bob and weave and he can still hit the wall, but if he's aiming for this, he's barely going to hit the wall. If he's aiming, expecting for me to pull away and suddenly I don't, it's a problem. I actually used this for non-self-defense. Well, it was a self-defense reason, but it wasn't. I wasn't being attacked in like a life-threatening way. I was promoted. I was in the military, and I was promoted to a new rank. And my squad leader was on vacation when I got my promotion. Okay? And we had this thing. It's kind of like the birthday punches kind of thing, right? Grab your arm and beat the shit out of you. Okay, our unit had a ban against what we call blood stripes, right? Because the rank pin goes through here, it's 2 posts, and where it went on the collar lined up with your clavicle, and they would stick it in there and not put the backings on it, and then punch down on it. Right? Hopefully, it missed the clavicle, because if not, you were digging that baby out. Anyway, so it was just a punching kind of thing, and so we go like an extra week or whatever, and then he's first day back, and he corners me in a stairwell in our unit, and he said, I owe you something. And I was like, come on, man. Nope. So he grabbed my arm and he hauled off, and when he took that first punch, right, I shifted away and it caused him to, okay. So that wasn't the trick. The trick was getting him to put me in a situation where when he hit me again, or when he actually landed it, it was not going to be anything close to what he wanted. Oh, I forgot to tell you, he was a weightlifter. His frickin' arms were like my calves. Right? So when I did that, when I pulled away this way, right, he moved me so that this side was up against a wall. And he kept a little he grabbed my arm and kept a little pressure on. So now, to him, he eliminated my ability to do what? This. But see, that's still thinking 2-dimensionally. Because when he took that punch, I took a step forward. Of course, he missed on that one. Now, he gave me a lawful order. He almost hit the wall. When I moved, right, he came really close to hitting that friggin' wall. And so he gave me a order to not move. Okay? So I stood there and took my shots. But because he was worried I was going to do something else tricky, he didn't hit me as hard because he needed the ability to pull his punch, to not compromise himself. So this had nothing to do with not getting hit. This had to do with getting him into a state where he couldn't or wouldn't deliberately hit me as hard as he could. Because the reality, Bo-Ryaku, is you can't survive everything. And in a self-defense situation or whatever, it's not that you're not going to get hit, shot, stabbed, or whatever. That's not your job. Your job is to not have those things happen so badly that the TV gets turned off, that the machine stops operating, right? Okay. So anyway, we'll keep on moving. Right. So everybody that does Budo Taijutsu, Nippo Taijutsu, whatever, right? You should be familiar with some of these things, like attacking from angles or directions that they don't expect. So we're doing indirect confrontation. So he throws a punch, and I shift off on this naname angle, so it closes me up and opens him, and then I have a target right in front of me. Okay, instead of Bob, but we're both closed off equally, and we're hoping we can get through the barrier. Okay? I just need to understand where his strikes go and what kind of weapon systems he's using so that I can do what I need to do. Okay. Next one. We've already been talking about this, right? Well, really, what this really boils down to is strength. The difference here, right, is strength versus manipulation. He's focusing on strength. I'm focusing on manipulating everything and anything I can within that situation to flip the advantage. Okay. So again, right, the strength guy, it's about domination, dominating the opponent, physically imposing their will. If it's not a physical fight, right, it could be a relationship, right? Now it's imposition of will. You will comply, or I will do something to you, take something away that you need, whatever, right? Some relationships, it's just a type of bully, right? Oh, you didn't do that? Well, I guess you don't love me if you won't do. Right? That usually only ever happens once with me, because I'll say, at what point did we discuss that love or this relationship or this business partnership or whatever was dependent upon me being your slave? Because if this is not mutually beneficial, then I want no part of it. See, that starts to impose control, because they either want out of it, which is fine, it releases me from the chains, or they change their way of doing things because now they're worried about, see, they're threatening to take something away from you, but now they're worried about losing something. Because if they have to go fishing again, how long is it going to take them to find somebody else that they think they can bully, manipulate, whatever, okay? And don't ever think that bullies are just this. There are bullies that attack with this, and there are bullies that attack with this. This is the hard one, right? But you can make it happen, okay? So, again, Bo-Ryaku focuses on manipulating the opponent into defeating themselves. And I know this shit's used all the time in the martial arts, but saying it, just like, we're going to use this force against him. Yeah, I know. I hear what you're saying, but you're not doing it, okay? Or the weapon's an extension of the body and stuff like that. Yeah, it's easy to say, hard to do, okay? Another difference is the difference between fixed and flexible plans, okay? In the Budokan, we have 9 schools. What the hell does that mean? Well, it means we have a shit ton of techniques. Duh, right? Each school, same principles and concepts, but they're geared to handling certain types of situations, each individually, and they're different. Punch to the face, right? Each school has multiple ways of handling that, and I don't just mean kata, right? Strategically, gyoko ryu, orbiting, koto ryu, drawing back, creating this angling that breaks their strength and balance, and then you enter into this thing, right? Togaku ryu, deceiving them and getting them to not want to attack you, or it's escape and evasion kind of things. Tagagi Yosho-ryu is how do you do that in a tight space, like between parked cars or in a small room or whatever, where you can't do certain things because he can use the closeness of things to jam up your techniques. How do you corkscrew him and drive him straight down to the ground? Those kind of things, right? So what we have are, if you look at it from a bigger picture, we have 9 different ways to strategically handle similar situations. So if what I'm doing now isn't working, I can switch. I can switch. I can switch. The average person can't switch. There's a smaller group that has another way that they're okay at. Okay? Very few people can switch another time. Okay? So again, this is the difference between, like, just with the Bujinkan, the difference between looking at, I do Bujinkan, which just throws everything into a big old fucking lump, or seeing everything from the perspective of strategy, perception, or principles, concepts, those kind of things. Control and manipulation of the situation, and not just limiting things to the physical. Okay? Because all kata are strategic physical examples of any kind of conflict. Verbal argument, emotional shit, pushy salesman, whatever. It's the same thing. If we can get past the, I'm avoiding a punch and hitting his arm, and then we can get past that to the principles and concepts. Oh, the power we have. right? And then number 5, the difference here is ego versus mission driven, which should fit self-defense really well, except that if somebody goes to a self-defense school that focuses on fighter, brute force kind of stuff, then it's not. Because people go to a fight school because they want to be an MMA champion, or they want to be, a boxing pro or whatever, right? People typically think about, use the words for, and seek out self-defense classes so that they can escape situations that are thrust at them and they don't want any part of. So yes, they might have to do something physical, but it's to get the hell out, not to win a belt or a trophy or a check or bragging rights or whatever, right? It's very, very different, okay? So again, the ninja's approach is mission driven, right? I want to get the hell out of here. I want to go home so I can continue taking care of my family, and somebody else isn't calling my wife honey, kind of thing, right? Or my kid's dad. Right? So anyway, right? Again, neutralizing the attacker in a way that avoids prolonged conflict and or legal repercussions. Because in every self-defense situation, see, this is something that the sport fighters don't have, and the people that do street fighting like them or that emulate them, they don't get. And I don't mean they don't get it because nobody explained it to them. They don't get it because it's not a problem. In a sport ring, as long as I follow the rules that are allowed, I can get away with cheating a little bit because I get warnings, right? But I'm never going to jail for assault or attempted murder for beating the living shit out of this guy. Even if he dies, right? It's low chance, but even if this boxer dies or ends up freaking brain dead or whatever, okay? Unless I went full on animal in the freaking ring and broke all the rules and whatever, and then I stepped outside of that protection, I'm not going to jail. Okay? But in every real world situation, we have the possibility of 3 attackers. And I don't mean 3 people, right? We have the incident that we have to physically deal with and survive. After that, we may have, call it PTSD, call it residual leftover from the adrenal response. How quickly can I get my head and my shit back together again to get back to work, to take care of the family? Because a lot of people, they got into an argument with somebody at 10 a.m. and at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they're still telling anybody, they're still telling everybody, oh, dude, back off, okay? Like, this shit happened, and I'm still trying to, think straight. Holy fuck. Seriously? Okay, so you can fight and you can dish it out, but you're going to be still shaking hours later. We got to get shit back together, right? And then the third possible attacker is the legal system. This is how a ninja thinks. Just because I won this one doesn't mean I'm going to win one or the other or both of the other 2. Okay? And if I screw up the legal one, I could end up in a place where I could have to do that first one over and over and over and over again. But this ninja has a tactic for that. Just in case I ran it up there, I've got a couple of corrections officers and whatnot. They all know and they all smile. On in processing, I'm punching one of them or some tough guy that I see that's wearing the same jumpsuit I am, and I'm getting thrown in solitary. Because it's the safest place in the whole fucking prison. And every time I'm being let out, I'll punch somebody else and get tossed back in. And that's how I'm going to write off my time. Because if they can't get at me, right, we have something white belts learn. If you can't hit me, you can't hurt me. If you can't hurt me, you can't beat me. Okay? That's the difference between ninja thinking and the ego that goes, oh, fuck that, man. Look, I'm not, I don't want the guards pissed off at me. Better that than all the places you could be surrounded. Somebody could come up with a toothpick that they turned into a shiv or whatever. You can't watch over everybody's shoulder. Right? So the advantage of all this is that a mission-driven mindset ensures that decisions are made with clarity and purpose, not clouded by pride, ego, or emotion. Okay. So very, very quickly here, right? 3 costs. Right. I already mentioned most of these things. There's 3 costs to doing the brute force kind of thing that we really need to consider, okay? And those things are an emotional toll, yours or the people that love you. Okay. There is a legal toll. Right. Shit can happen afterwards. Right. And there is a we'll call it a time-based, but it's really, I'm just going to write it down this way. There's a revenge toll. Okay. Because even if I take him out and he can't ever come back at me again, he has family and friends. And all one of them has to do is think, he didn't do nothing, man. I've seen things, right? Somebody shoots a cop, run, right? Go to grandma's house, hides, grandma on the news. What? He didn't do nothing. All he did was shoot a cop. All he did was shoot a woman. All he did was shoot a pregnant woman. All he did was, really? Holy shit. Right? Anyway, all right. So let's do 3 quick tactical examples. We'll do some mix of these ideas during the Friday masterclass. Okay. So this is one of them. First one is feigning weakness. Feigning weakness. Okay. So earlier I talked about coming at the person with a broken technique, right? So people, the conventional fighter leads with what they're good at, which just screams, this is what you have to defend against. Okay. But if I'm really good at grappling, not so good at punching and kicking, nobody gets to know which one. Right? I'm actually pretty good at both. But if I'm really, really good at wrestling, but not so good at punching and kicking, I can do it, but, right? Then the last thing I'm going to do is pose or poise myself so I can tackle this guy. I'm going to tackle him. But what I'm going to do is get really good at moving around like somebody who's good at punching or somebody who's good at kicking. So he is convinced that that's my strength. Right? And then if he's a wrestler, and especially if he's a wrestler, I'm going to stay away from his strengths. I'm going to make him fight me in a way that he's not strong at. Okay? So his best option, as long as weapons aren't involved, his best option is to get inside the punches and kicks to try to restrain me or tackle me or whatever, right? Then he can get me on the ground and go back to his punching. But remember what I said, I'm good at grappling. So my job isn't to tackle him and try to figure out how to get him to the ground. The ninja's job is to convince him that he's going to have to put his hands on me because I'm a puncher and a kicker. Again, I have to assess him, right? I have to work this out. This isn't something I just guess at, okay? But one of the ways to do this thing is to lead with your weakness so he sees that as a strength. And then when he moves in to nullify the strength, he moves into range for you to do the shit that you're good at. Same thing. If I'm good at punching and kicking, I'm going to position myself like a grappler, right? So he thinks that he can throw punches and kicks because he's not going to get close enough to me. But that's okay. I'm really good at nullifying those things when they come in, okay? Or if I have my trusty knife with me, which I almost always do, or some other weapon, I'm going to move like I'm unarmed. And then at a certain point, that's going to come out at the least, when he least expects it. And then he realizes he brought fist to a knife fight or fist to a gunfighter. Okay. So manipulation. Okay. I don't lead with the shit right away. Like all these people that want to walk around and we talk, the subject of self-defense or martial arts comes up and they go, I just shoot him. How many people are fucking listening to you in your realm that knows or thinks you might have a gun? They're not going to get involved in a fist fight with you or whatever. They're going to come up, stab you from behind, hit you with a pipe, or shoot you from across the street. You'll never know it happened. Way too many people, the ninja would never fucking spill their guts about what they're good at. But the ego-driven guy, oh yeah, I'll fucking grab you and punch the shit out of you. Oh, okay. Note to self. Okay. Number 2, using the environment as an ally. Environment as not an ally, it's an ally, right? So If I can get him to punch that wall, if I can get him to trip over that root system or the crack in the sidewalk, if I can, he's standing next to a chair or whatever, and as he starts to move in, I move the chair and then shove it into him, which, right, if I catch him at the right time, it's going to hit his legs and his upper body comes forward. And what are his arms doing? Well, he could punch it. No, he can't, because when I cause a trip, his moral response kicks in and his limbs are engaged in keeping his balance, which means they're no longer weapons and they're no longer shields. And I punch him or I grab him by the eye sockets or whatever it's going to take because he's in a fucked position. Okay? So, exploiting overcommitment. Okay? Exploiting overcommitment. Okay? But I have to give him reasons. Those guys that go, people never grab. We have something in our mod 3, halfway to black belt. Somebody's moving in like a boxer or whatever, right? When they get close enough, not for me to hit their head or their body or whatever, when those hands or the forearms are close enough, I punch the bones or I smack the bones of the bottom or the back of their hand or try to break their fingers or whatever. So now they're going to retract and they put more distance. Okay. But what may happen is if I'm hitting this thing and I leave my arm in a certain position, he's going to go from avoidance if he needs to, if he's imperative and he needs to get me. He's going to go from saving the limb to grabbing mine, my arm, my wrist, whatever, to keep me from doing that shit again. And as soon as he grabs me, now I have him. See, most people think when he grabs, right, he has you. No, he doesn't. He has my fucking clothing. He has my wrist. He has, right? When he grabs me, he's simultaneously taken a limb out of the fight. He can't hit me with it. And 2, I know exactly where that limb is, so I can hit it anytime. If I can scratch an itch without looking, I can hit the bones of his hand, right? And 3, he's locked himself onto me, and so now I can do a technique where I don't have to grab him, right? He's done half the freaking work. Now I can apply that arm bar, that wrist reversal, or whatever, right? Mindset. He doesn't have me, right? He has me right where I want him. Okay? All right. So anyway, and then I could throw a 4 on there, but we've already talked about it, right? The biggest thing is avoiding the fighter mentality, avoiding falling back into that. The hardest thing for trained people when they're up against somebody else is not slipping into mimicking them. I've seen good self-defense or good Taijutsu people. They know they're supposed to be low and waiting and watching. And when that Taekwondo person starts bouncing around, next thing you know, this person's doing this. Our stuff doesn't work from that position. Okay? So, because that's how he's fighting. Well, that's how the fight is. So I should always be doing something not what he's doing. Okay? So the reminder goes all the way back when I was talking about the 8 phases of effective self-defense strategy for my students, or for those of you who want it. You can go into onlineninjaacademy.com. I'll try to post the direct link to the page where you can sign up and get the downloadable for it. But that 8 phases framework, our 8 phases that I give people at white belt is the entire thing. Bo-Ryaku, this type of strategy, is in every single level, whether we're escaping to safety, using de-escalation tactics like distraction or dissuasion, the physical stuff, the PTSD afterwards, the dealing with the legal system. Bo-Ryaku, there is strategy and strategic application in every one of those levels. So yeah, it's advanced, but just like in the scrolls, all the advanced, most important stuff goes in the Jōryaku or the Shoden no Maki. It's not beginner stuff. It's the kata that have the core principles, the ones that are non-negotiable. It's a problem with people thinking of beginner, intermediate, and advanced, like progress and development, as opposed to the way the scrolls are laid out, which is not that way. All right, what else do I have here? I think that's it. All right, so we'll just kind of wrap this up here. So if you make it in for the Friday virtual training class, during that class, you will learn how to use tricky strategies that are designed to use your environment and even your assailant's sense of superior control to set him up for a surprise counter. You're going to expand your understanding, right, of attacker psychology when alone or when it's a group, right? And to manipulate and control their ability to use their strength or numbers or advantages so that we end up neutralizing, right? Multiple attackers, right? 2 attackers, not twice as difficult. It's 3-4 times as difficult if you're only focusing on the physical. Okay? What you have to remember is they're all working together, kind of, but they're not operating from the same brain. That changes everything. Okay? And we're going to make sure that we hammer home the need to avoid, and I'm not going to tell you what it is today, one big mistake that most martial artists and conventional fighters fall into, and it actually causes their downfall, right, when the odds are against them in a real situation. Okay? If you've been listening and you can reverse engineer what I covered, then you probably already know what it is. Otherwise, I'll see you on Friday, right? And if not, I gave you plenty to think about, plenty to work on. So if I don't see you at any point during anything else, I'll see you next week on our next episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. I'll see you. Train hard.